Welcome to The One Inside, an internal family systems podcast. I'm your host, Tammy Sollenberger. On today's episode, I chat with Dr. Virginia Seewaldt about examining whiteness. I am so excited to tell you about the Heirloom Summit, which is co-created by Duran Young, founder of Black Therapist Rock, and Dick Swartz, founder of IFS. It is intentionally taking place during Black History Month on February 26th through the 28th. We are going to be offering this collective healing experience as a powerful opportunity to explore the legacy burden of racism and anti-Blackness. Using IFS, we will explore the witnessing and unburdening process to work towards increased self-leadership and to begin repairing the personal impact of our traumatic history as a nation. Stay tuned for a link for the listeners of the One Inside podcast so you can receive a discount when you register. Hey everyone. I am super excited about the next talk in the Heirloom Summit series. Virginia and I had a really great conversation, and it's a little bit long, so I'm going to make this introduction really short. We decided to call this Examining Whiteness because that seems to be the thread throughout our conversation. And what I guess I want you to know is the conversation, even though it's about some really heavy topics, I think it's warm and engaging and connecting. And so I think that was the word that kept coming up for me as I was listening to it. I just felt so connected to her, and I hope that's how you feel as you're listening to it. And I also hope that you are able to connect to the parts of you that are triggered as you listen to the conversation too. So my guess is there'll be some parts, I hope. Actually, I hope you'll have some trailheads. So that is my hope for you. So reminder about the Heirloom Summit at the end of February, where there will be more discussions and engagement about these types of conversations. And then I will continue to have more guests throughout the month of February to lead us up into the summit. So hope everyone is doing well. I would love to connect with you, speaking of connection, at IFSTME on Twitter and Instagram, and at the One Inside Facebook page. Enjoy. Tell me where you are in the world, and what do you see when you look out your nearest window?
Okay, so I am in New York City, on the Upper West Side. And just to note, before I get to the next question, that this is Lenape land. This is stolen Lenape land. And just a sort of important reminder, just that, this is not land that we really belong on, or that we're here honestly. We're here through thievery, trickery, bloodshed. And I think it's always important to keep that in mind, especially given the topic we're talking about today. And then, as I look out my window, I see buildings and there's some blue sky. There is some blue sky and a cloud. Yeah, a perfect cloud.
How long have you lived in New York City?
Gosh, I think I've been here 15, 16 years.
What drew you to New York City?
I was living in Queens. I was living in Kew Gardens, which is lovely. It's a lovely little part of Queens. But most of my friends were in Manhattan, and I was finding myself commuting in all the time. And I was like, what am I doing? Why don't I just move into Manhattan?
Yeah.
And so... Are
you from New York area in originally?
Yeah, I'm from Long Island originally.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, it was, and then once I got here, I just really loved it here, and I like being here. I like, walking outside and just being among a lot of people, and it's fun to be in the city. I mean, now it's different because, we're in the middle of the pandemic, but there's not as much to do. But I used to love, like, I can take a subway 2 stops and go see a Broadway show. Like that just, that's the great part about living in Manhattan.
Yeah. How has it been hard since COVID?
I think the main ways it's been hard is I feel like the last 4 years have been really hard in that a lot has happened that, my patients come in, my clients come in bringing a lot of their anxieties about what's going on in the world. And I still haven't had a chance to process my anxiety and my feelings. So I'm dealing with all my parts that are having feelings about it and trying to be with my patients. Sometimes my patients are bringing me the news, like XYZ happened, and I've been in session all day. So I'm like, I didn't even know that. So
Yes,
yeah.
same.
And just feeling like Zoom is hard,
Yeah.
and feeling like I don't have the same range and variety and of ways of replenishing
Yeah.
that I'm used to, right? That like I
Yeah.
feel like a patient and I were talking last week about how that feeling of like when you don't like back before, I guess before credit cards, or it was like we had your first car and like couldn't back in my day anyway, and we're scraping up hitting up your friends for a buck here, buck here, and put $5 in the car. I
Yes.
feel like I'm
Yes.
just constantly putting $5 of gas in my tank, and I can't quite get it. I haven't had a full tank in I don't know how long. I take a week off, and maybe I've got half a tank. But
Yeah.
that's how it feels, like just running on empty a lot of the times, or running on at best a half tank.
Yeah. So what do you like? What do you do? What do you do with that? Because then you have to show up. You have to show up in some way, or yeah. How do you? What do you do?
I think what do I do? Just doing my best, right? Like just trying to have a little self forgiveness, self compassion, a little grace.
Yeah.
I think once I'm in session, there can be something about that can be sort of replenishing in the moment. Not as much as in person, though. Like it really has hit me how much doing sessions in person, how much of a like an energy exchange or something there is. Like there's something really
Mm,
fulfilling in a kind of energetic way about just sitting with someone, even if you're sort of, you know, in the position of kind of being with them to help them or whatever.
yeah. Yeah.
There's something you get back just by being in person with people. So, um,
Has this has happened to me a couple of times where like I was at Staples and I saw someone and she was like, "Hey, how are you doing?" And I didn't like know how to handle it. I was like a total weirdo. Like yeah.
like a patient or
No, like a
it's just a
acquaintance. It was an
acquaintance.
acquaintance. It was an
Yeah,
acquaintance. Yeah, so it wasn't a patient, but it was like someone, and I thought, I'm starting to get not used to those like person to person interactions. Like I was such a
yeah.
weirdo.
Yeah, I can imagine that. I don't think I've like bumped into anybody. That's so funny. Like, I'm in New York City. I bump into people all the time like, that I'm not planning to see. I'm like, oh, hey, how you doing? Oh, that
Yeah.
hasn't happened, or we haven't recognized each other. Maybe because we've got masks on. I don't even
Right.
know.
Wow.
But I am trying to see as many friends as possible, right? Like just trying to meet up and
Yeah.
early in the pandemic. Um, one of my best friends, I hadn't seen her. It was like, I guess like a month. And I was like, hi, this is ridiculous. So I didn't have a bike at the time. And so I rode a city bike, so one of those little, the bikes that they have at the racks and everything that are big, heavy, clunky, they're made for safety, not for speed.
Okay.
I, I biked all the way to Brooklyn to go to Prospect to meet her at Prospect Park so we could like have lunch, and it was so worth it. And
Mm.
it was so exhausting, and I was like dead by the time I got home. And going over the Brooklyn Bridge and one of those things
Oh my
is
gosh.
not recommended.
That is so funny. I rented one of those when we at the IFS conference when it was in Colorado. I went with my friend Kathy, and she's a huge bike rider, and we had rented a Airbnb, and we did the bikes, and we got the app on our phone, and
Yeah,
it was amazing. It was
yeah,
so fun.
it's so fun.
So let's shift and
Yeah,
talk about your IFS story, however you want to do that, and then how you
yeah.
came to be so passionate about this topic.
I guess it started, I got trained in EMDR, and I was in an EMDR consult group. And so in the EMDR consult group, I kept hearing people talk about other modalities of the trauma therapies. So like somatic experiencing, blah, blah, blah. Then I got trained in somatic experiencing, and then AEDP. So I got trained in AEDP. And
One of my friends is like certified in that, the
yeah,
ADP. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, she does
It's
that.
another good one.
Yeah. We have some
And
good, there's some parallels with IFS, I think. We have some really good
yeah,
conversations.
there's so much overlap with all the trauma therapies. They really, this is the best kind of, group of therapy I think that there is to date. So
Yeah. So sorry to interrupt you about that.
yeah, no, no, not at all. So
So
then
you have a part that loves getting trained. That's what I'm hearing. Okay.
definitely I had a training part that like for years I was just like bam, 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 one after another. And it was, I used to say if I could be a full-time student and like get paid to do that, I would totally do that.
Yeah.
But one of the other things that people were mentioning was IFS, 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 parts, 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 and it sounded really intriguing. And so I did, I did the Cape Cod workshop with Dick Shores, and from the first minute he started talking about it, I was like, this is it. Something just spoke to me. I was like, this is it. I totally get this. This resonates. I mean, and I had never even looked inside to pay attention to parts before. Like, it didn't make any sense in terms of my internal world, but it just made intuitive sense.
Mm.
And then we broke out into groups, and we, with some assistants who were there, and we started paying attention to our own parts. And I will never forget it. Sitting in this like auditorium in Cape Cod, where they said, "Okay, just ask." I don't remember what the part was, but just ask that part to step back. And I was like, "Okay." And I asked it to step back, and I felt my whole body change. And I was like, "Whoa, we're really onto something here.
Wow.
Something's happening." And then like different insight came. And so from there, I was like, okay, so I was using it a little bit with patients, but like getting stuck. And so I was like, okay, I got to do the level one. So I took my level one in New York. Um, and it was just, same, like just, okay, wow, now I'm getting it more and more. I took it with Pam Schwartz and Steve Krantz, who I just love. And, they're a great team. And it was, yeah, just from there, just like wanting to do it more and more. And by the end of the training, I was like, I would love to teach this. I want a PA. So then I started PAing, and then, taking level twos and, incorporating it more and more into my work. And I just find it's the most helpful thing I've ever used with people. Um, it's the only, like EMDR, SE, all these others, it's the only thing that people ask for. Like when I was using it sort of more sporadically, when I was first learning it, um, I would do a session with a patient, and then they'd come in and maybe start talking about their week, and then they'd be like, can we do the parts thing again? And I'd be like, yeah, let's do it. I was like, nobody ever like really asks for like, in my experience, nobody had been like, oh, can we do EMDR? Can we do that thing where my eyes move back and forth again? Like, but they would ask, they wanted to get to know their parts.
So you found that people were asking for it and you were like, because they were feeling probably the same way they were getting what you were
Yeah,
getting.
yeah, exactly. Having that same like, oh my gosh, this is something special. This is something
Yeah.
that works. This is
Yeah.
something that, yeah. And then to have the experience of have someone um, become compassionate toward a part they had previously felt really scared of or really angry toward or like disgusted by, and to see that shift and see the connection and have someone say, oh my gosh, you're just trying to protect me. Oh, and that connection, and then the part feeling so relieved and seeing, like, I can feel my eyes sort of stinging right now. Like, it's so moving. So there's just
Mm-hmm.
something also so gratifying in doing this work and connecting people with their parts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you always been passionate about I mean, I don't even know what to call it, like racial
Just
connecting justice, or
yeah.
yeah, would you call it racial
Yeah,
justice?
I think I tend to call it like racial justice work, anti-racism work, dismantling white supremacy. And so, and I mean, I guess just to be clear, like a lot of people cringe at the phrase white supremacy. Um, and, we can go into a little more detail about some of these things. I'm not sure where we're going to, go and expand, but because there's, it's so big. But, one of the ways, so white supremacy, people think, KKK, people in hoods, burning crosses, that kind of thing. Um, think about, like what happened at the Capitol last weekend, last week. Um, but the term, from a social political perspective, social political scholars use it more broadly, in that it's a system where whiteness dominates, whiteness is considered the norm. Um, and that's basically it, right? Like that's a real simple, simplistic definition, but it's how we live. We live in a country, a white supremacist country, right? Like white people have all the privileges, white people, and I can explain what that means a little bit more too. White people get the benefit of the doubt. If Robin DiAngelo had a great, I was at a talk with her a few months ago, and she had a great set of slides. Here are the producers of, or the CEOs of the main film companies in the United States. And it was like a sea of white men with like a few people of color, a couple women, like, a couple women of color. And then here are all the CEOs of the Fortune 500 companies, white men, again, like a couple of people of color, a couple of women. Here are, here's your government. And I mean, like, like here, white men. And so, white supremacy, patriarchy really is how this country, really functions. So when I say white supremacy, I'm not actually talking about KKK. I'm not talking about people storming the Capitol. I'm talking about the system we live under.
Yeah, it's almost like the water we swim in, but
It
we don't really
is.
even realize we're in the water. So no one's saying like, because we're swimming in it. So it's like I can think of the way like the KKK, and I can feel scared, and I can be like, oh my gosh, that's not me, because I'm not recognizing that I'm also swimming in the water.
Right.
Does that
Right.
make sense?
Yeah, it totally makes sense. Like, it's sort of like water is a great analogy, like water to a fish for white people, right? To be very specific, the we is white people when you're
Yes.
talking, right? Because it's very
Yes.
different from for Black people and people of color. They're very aware, right?
Yes.
So it's sort of
Yes.
like a stream, right? Like, so white people are just like fish that are swimming down the stream, and we don't even notice the water. It's carrying us. We're going faster, right? Because of the stream. And then for Black people and people of color, it's like, no, they have to go the other direction of the stream, and they're feeling the force of the stream against them.
Yeah.
And they're constantly kind of having to push against the stream, so the same stream that makes things smoother and easier for us makes things difficult